It's time for Myth of the Week.
All right, awesome. We have a really awesome myth for you. This is myth number 32 in our Myth of the Week list. And this has been in our myths for quite a while. So you'll see these flexible metallic conduits that are coming out of this wireway, and there was a lot of really good comments. A lot of people was like, "Is that wireway even legal with all those conductors in there?" So there's a chance that they have like massive deration in there. It looks like they have a lot of stuff going on. I don't really think that these guys actually owned a level either, because most of them conduits don't really look like they're spaced correctly or level or anything. They just kind of slapped them in there. But I just took this picture off like Google Images and just grabbed it. There's a ton of code violations if you really look at this picture. But one of the things that we ran for the myth every time is that these flexible conduits that are located in the center, there is a way that with the code per 251.18 that you don't need to run an equipment ground in those flexes. And so that's kind of something that you run into. It says each equipment grounding conductor run with or enclosing the circuit conductors shall be one or more combination of the following. And so it gives you all these things. I'll pull a section out of James's code book where I'm not going to go through and read every single one of these things, but listed fittings, trade size not larger than 1.25 inches, and then here's where that comes in, not more than 6 foot in length. So that's pretty interesting. And in that situation, in that picture that I was showing, I don't really know how you would actually use those flexes as the equipment grounding conductor, because what you would need to do is you would probably need to have a bond bushing inside that wireway. And we got Juan's popping in here. What's up, Juan? Mr. G in the house.
Hey, Juan.
You're anytime you show up, Juan, it's awesome to have you in the house, Mr. G. But so that's what's awesome about these ones, is that it gives you this whole list of conditions in order to do that. And I don't really see any benefit in that situation of actually using the wireway or using the flexible metal conduit as an equipment grounding conductor, because what you would need to do is, in this case, if you were to do that, you would need to have bonding bushings on both sides. And I don't really see the benefit of not just pulling a full-size ground through there. And this installation, I would say that if you started using those flexible metal conduits as equipment grounding conductor, I could see the inspector hitting you pretty hard because of just a bunch of other things I would know if I was the inspector in this situation.
Sure. What I would say to this also is, looking at the illustration, I'm going to assume there's an equipment ground in each one of those. And
Sure.
the reason I'm going to say that, back, God, this has been many, many, many years ago. My dad was actually the expert for OSHA. And what had happened was there was a guy that got killed. And did he get killed? No, I think he almost did. He got hurt really bad, but he was
an HVAC guy, right?
Yeah. And
Okay.
the EMT like this, the EMT that's up there, if you actually look in 250.118, the EMT can be used as an equipment grounding conductor. Well, what happened was, anybody's been doing electrical work for any amount of time knows that those conduits come loose at the couplings, and they wasn't able to get the fault current path back. And what happened was, he reached up and he grabbed that conduit and grabbed the steel, and the current went through his body. And it wasn't the shock that hurt him the worst. What hurt him the worst was the fall, because he fell out of the ceiling,
Right.
come down, hit his head, busted open, and all of that.
Right.
And then back then, so give everybody an idea where you would look to find this. But when all this took place, that was in 250-96B. And Dad was representing OSHA, and they were saying that this was uh, an improper installation. Well, they had their expert that got up, and he was saying if you look at 250-96B, the EMT can be used as equipment ground, but he left out a most important part, which was 250-50 at the time. And
Has
what
to be permanent and continuous.
that's right. And so when they asked him that, he said, well, at the time of installation, it was. And they said, no. They said permanent continuous means it's going to be that way to provide that fault current path back. So when that happened, it got ruled on, and the company got back then. I mean, it was a lot because it was a couple $1,000,000, and they got sued and lost. Then all of a sudden, what did you start seeing? You started seeing all these manufacturer specs come out. You started seeing these facilities. They all started requiring you to pull an equipment ground in. Okay.
True.
So when I look at this illustration here, just to give a little background by things that I know that have happened in the past, I would assume naturally that there's going to be an equipment ground pulled in through there. So that 6 foot or less of flexible metal conduit there is not going to be used as an equipment ground.
Yeah, and we had a lot of guys in the comments that got the equipment grounding conductor and the grounding electrode conductor confused. We're not talking about the grounding electrode conductor.
No, it's the
Um,
equipment grounding conductor. Matter of fact,
so,
let me comment on that. Now, there's a lot of instructors now. Uh, they actually teach the way Dad and I have been teaching this for a long time, and I'm talking about some top instructors that said they never looked at it that way. And what we
right,
have always told everybody, and if you go back and look at our Stallcup's electrical design book, and you look at the grounding chapter, we laid the chapter out where you had the supply side and then you had the load side. Okay. And what we always told everybody back then, until they added table 250.102C1, we would say anything that's on the supply side, you're going to look at table 250.66. That's where all your system bonding jumpers were, all your grounding electroconductors, all of that. Once you leave that service equipment, now you're on the load side, and now you're going to be looking at table 250.122, and that's where you pick up your equipment grounding conductors, your equipment bonding jumpers. But I want everybody to see the difference in the wording. It all says equipment on that load side. And that's the
right,
way we've been teaching it. If you go look at the code and see how it's when they relayed Article 250 out, you'll see that it was laid out just like that design book. And it was
right.
all based on that concept. And then they come in and say, well, what if I go over here and I have a separately derived system? Now you got your system bonding jumpers and all of that. So then they added
True.
table 250.102C1. And now when you look at those two tables, they're practically identical to each other. It's just one's for the supply side and one is for the separately derived systems.
True, and yeah, Juan. Basically, equipment grounding. A lot of people said grounding electrode conductor, which the grounding electrode conductor would be for your supply side, and then your equipment grounding conductor would be for your load side. And yes, and you are bonding to a degree. You're actually basically using it for both. But
And that's
one
why I
thing,
said equipment bonding conductor,
true,
because you have equipment grounding conductor, then you have an equipment bonding conductor and equipment bonding jumpers. And all of
true.
that says equipment. And like Juan was saying, it's all still bonded in to a degree, but it's to get it back to where? To the one point where you establish your grounding electrode system.
Yeah, and one point to add to you too, Juan, is like if you were in like 517, 13, you have different rules for like when you're in a medical facility and you have patient care, and you would not be able to use that jacket as your bond and your equipment grounding conductor.
That's
You
right.
would need to have the bonding of that jacket, and you would need the equipment grounding conductor inside as well to comply with A and B of 517.13.
Sure. And something I want to point out about that also. and this was brought up before, and there was, there were some arguments when you're getting into about an outlet and things like that. Chapters 5 through 8, they supplement or modify what's in the first 4 chapters, and that's a specific type installation for the wiring method where you're using that AC cable. Okay, and
Agreed.
and that is why it supplements or modifies. Okay,
True.
what's in the first 4 chapters. And when somebody wants to pick and choose and then try to say 1 through 4 is going to apply no matter what, and 5 through 8 don't supplement or modify, I'm just going to tell you that's false information right there. That's a false
True.
interpretation. Okay.
I agree. Yeah. But it's really awesome to get this myth out there. Basically, this myth is 100% confirmed that you can use a 6-foot length of flexible metallic conduit as an equipment grounding conductor, as long as it meets all the criteria that we listed in there. To me personally, I would just tell my apprentices, just pull a ground. It's way easier than trying to determine, like, if you tighten the fitting correctly, if you use the right listed fitting and stuff,
Well,
so all that stuff.
I've even seen manufacturer specs now. They tell you to pull an equipment ground and everything. They don't care. That's
Yeah,
that's in their specs.
true. Yep. So awesome. Thanks for everyone participating in the myth of the week, and hopefully I keep coming up with ones that you guys like and help you guys learn. And there was people in there that were like, "Well, I said false first, but now I went and looked at the answers and I realized I'm wrong." And that meant a lot to me, that people are willing to just say, "You know what, I wasn't right on that." And that's cool. We're all learning. There's a lot of stuff I don't know. I mean,
Oh, I mean, I do this constantly, code, and I still don't know some things. Any instructor tells you they know everything. That's a bunch of crap. I
yeah.
mean, I have a vast knowledge, dealing in the oil and gas industry, the
Mhm.
communications with AT&T, Verizon. I mean, I've done a lot of work for Beck Construction that deals with a lot of um, the AT&T and Verizon, all that, and all their communication facilities. And
Nice.
I've done a lot, not only with that, but also the safety aspect of it. And
Right.
I have a broad knowledge, going and seeing their installations, talking to them, and figuring something out that where when they need to perform maintenance, they're doing it in a safe way. And even with all that knowledge and all the places I've been, the things I've seen, I can still tell you, I still got a lot of stuff to learn. you know, you
Well,
just can't remember everything.
I can tell you what, it's not gonna be looking so good for you at the Willie quiz tonight, because I think I
It
think
wasn't
I
last
learned
week.
I I learned how to maybe trick you a little, but uh, like this week is easy compared to last week, so.
I like the question of the week. It's much easier.
Yeah, and I think this one's pretty easy, but we might have some controversy, and I think you might not like the question this week. So we'll see. You
Okay.
might tear it up and shred it, which is always an option.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's awesome, Juan. That's why we're doing these. Is it's just really fun to bring that clarification where you guys can see it in a picture, see what we're talking about, see where you would have to kind of go through all this stuff, and a lot of the application medical facilities supplement or modify the rules in Article 250. So
Mhm.
you just have to realize that you're going off that 250-118 whenever you're using the parts A and B and complying with both of them. So appreciate you in the chat, Juan. Always appreciate your questions and your insight that you bring to the
Sure.
table.